I was just wondering, what would you consider to be the worst investment you've ever made?
The worst investment I ever made? How long do you have? I've made some very bad ones, but that doesn't really bother me. It may bother the shareholders, but that's another question. You're going to make mistakes in life. I mean, there's no question about it. You don't want to make them on the big decisions, who you marry and some things like that. So there's no way I'm going to make a lot of business and investment decisions without making some mistakes. I may try to minimize them. I don't dwell on them at all. I don't look back. The biggest mistakes are the ones that actually don't show up. They're the mistakes of omission rather than commission. We've never lost that much money on any one investment, but it's the things that I knew enough to do that I didn't do. We have missed profits of as much as maybe $10 billion in things that I knew enough to do and I didn't do. Now, the fact I didn't buy Microsoft way back is not a foregone opportunity because I didn't know enough to make that decision. But there have been other investments where I did know enough to make the decision, and for one reason or another, I either didn't do it at all or I did it on a small scale. I was sucking my thumb when I should have been writing checks, basically. And those don't show up. There's no place where it shows missed opportunities, but I've missed some big ones. The triumphs in life are partly triumphs because you know that everything isn't going to be a triumph. And I would never get too hung up on mistakes. I know a lot of people that really agonize over them, and it just isn't worth it. I mean, tomorrow's another day, and you live it forward and just go on to the next thing.
I advise students, as much as possible, look for the job that you would take if you didn't need a job. I mean, don't sleepwalk through life, and don't say it's all going to be great. I'll do this and I'll do that, and I'm just marking time till I get to be older. As I've told people, that's like saving up sex for your old age. I mean, it just is not it is not a good idea. Yeah.
What are you urging them to do?
I'll explain it. Just what I'm talking about. Now, you really want to be doing what you love doing, and you can't necessarily find it on your first job.
Right.
But don't give up before you find it.
What brings you the most satisfaction beyond family?
Well, my greatest satisfaction is just staying in good health. I mean, when you're 86, you look at this a little differently.
So you're in good health?
Oh, yeah. I enjoy every day. I enjoy.
But what is it that you enjoy?
Well, I enjoy running Berkshire. Yeah. I mean, if you get right down into my psyche, I mean,
that's what I want to be.
Yeah, no, it's been my painting for 50 some years. I get to paint what I want. I don't have to do follow what Wall Street is telling me to do next quarter or something like that. So I own the brush, I own the canvas, and the canvas is unlimited. Now that's a pretty nice game, and I get to do it every day with people I like. I don't have to associate with anyone that causes my stomach to churn. If I were in politics, I'd have to smile at a lot of people that I want to hit.
You just don't talk to them.
It's really, I've got a good deal. I'm hanging on to it.
I'd like to know, we all consider you to be the financial business experts, and we look to you and follow your lead. But when you need advice and feedback about an idea or decision, I'd like to know, who do you go to?
Well, usually I look in the mirror. To be perfectly honest. The nature of what I do means I have to think pretty much independently. Because if I take a poll, in effect, I'm going to do what everybody else is doing, and I don't think much of that usually in investments. And so I have to have an environment, I have to have a temperament personally that lets me think for myself. And I've got a terrific partner, a fellow named Charlie Munger. And you can't find anybody any smarter, any better quality of anything. But we think a lot alike. And we do talk things over occasionally, but we don't talk them over very often because I know how he thinks, he knows how I think. He's taught me a lot, and why should I pay for a phone call if I know what he's going to say? So if I need to get a a cabinet around to make decisions or anything like that, I probably shouldn't be running the place. That doesn't bother me to have the responsibility for it, but I just don't want to put it up to a vote, because I've seen too many, particularly in the investment world, as you get larger and larger groups making the decisions, they get more and more homogenized. And I don't think you will ever get brilliant investment decisions out of a large committee.
I always look at IQ and talent as sort of representing the horsepower of the motor, but then in terms of the output, the efficiency with which the motor works, that depends on rationality, because a lot of people start out with 400 horsepower motors and get 100 horsepower of output, and it's way better to have a 200 horsepower motor and get it all into output. And so why do smart people do things that interfere with really getting the output they're entitled to? And it gets into habits, into character, into temperament, and it really gets into behaving in a rational manner. It's not getting in your own way. As I say, everybody here has the ability absolutely to do anything I do and much beyond. And some of you will and some of you won't. But it will, the ones that won't, it will be because you get in your own way. It won't because the world doesn't allow you to. It will be because you don't allow yourself to. You will move in the direction of the people that you associate with. So it's important to associate with people that are better than yourself, and actually the most important decision many of you make, not all of you, will be the spouse you choose. Right. And you want to associate with people who are the kind of person you'd like to be. You'll move in that direction, and the most important person by far in that respect is your spouse. I can't overemphasize how important that is, and you're right. The friends you have, they will form you as you go through life, and make some good friends, keep them for the rest of your life, but have them be people that you admire as well as like.
I have an old-fashioned belief that I should expect to make money in things that I understand. And when I say understand, I don't mean understand, what the product does or anything like that. I mean understand what the economics of the business are likely to look like 10 years from now or 20 years from now. I know, in general, what the economics of, say, Wrigley chewing gum will look like 10 years from now. The internet isn't going to change the way people chew gum. It isn't going to change which gum they chew. If you own the chewing gum market in a big way, and you've got Double Mint and Spearmint and Juicy Fruit, those brands will be there 10 years from now. So I can't pinpoint exactly what the numbers are going to look like on Wrigley, but I'm not going to be way off if I try to look forward on something like that. That evaluating that company is within what I call my circle of competence. I understand what they do, I understand the economics of it, I understand the competitive aspects of the business. So figuring out the economic consequences. TV. I think there's, 20, 25 million sets a year sold in the United States. I don't think there's one of them made in the United States anymore. You'd say TV set manufacturer, what a wonderful business. Everybody, nobody had a TV in 1950, or thereabouts, 45 to 50. Everybody has multiple sets now, but nobody in the United States has made any real money making the sets. They're all out of business. The Magnavoxes, the RCAs, all of those companies. Radio was the equivalent of over 500 companies making radios in the 1920s. Again, I don't think there's a U.S. radio manufacturer at the present time. But Coca-Cola, what was it, 1884 at Jacobs Pharmacy or whatever, the fellow comes up with something. A lot of copiers over the years. But now you've got a company that is selling roughly 1.1 billion 8-ounce servings of its product, not all Coke, Sprite, and some others, daily throughout the world 117 years later. So understanding the economic characteristics of a business is different than predicting the fact that an industry is going to do wonderfully. And so when I look at the internet businesses, or I look at tech businesses, I say this is a marvelous thing, and I love to play around on the computer, and now I order my books from Amazon and all kinds of things, but I don't know who's going to win. And unless I know who's going to win, I'm not interested in investing. I'll just play around on the computer. And defining your circle of competence is the most important aspect of investing. It's not how important, how large your circle is. You don't have to be an expert on everything. But knowing where the perimeter of that circle of what you know and what you don't know is, and staying inside of it, is all important. Tom Watson Sr., who started IBM, said in his book, he said, "I'm no genius," he said, "but I'm smart in spots, and I stay around those spots." And that is the key. So if I understand a few things, and I stick in that arena, I'll do okay. And if I don't understand something, but I get all excited about it because my neighbors are talking about it, and the stocks are going up and everything, I start fooling around someplace else, eventually I'll get creamed, and I should.
Well, in 1973, the Washington Post company had gone public in 1971, right about the Pentagon Papers time. But in 73, the Nixon administration was, through B.B. Rebozo, who was a pal of Nixon's, they were challenging the licenses of two of the Florida television stations the Post owned. So the stock went from 37 down to 16. Now, at 16, there were about 5 million shares outstanding. So the whole Washington Post company was selling for $80 million. And that included the newspaper, 4 big TV stations, Newsweek, and some other assets, and no debt to speak of. So the Washington Post company, which was intrinsically worth $400 or $500 million, was selling for about 80 million in the market. We bought most of our stock at about the equivalent of 100 million in the market. And it was ridiculous. I mean, you had a business that unquestionably was worth 4 or 5 times what it was selling for. And Nixon wasn't going to put them out of business.
When you're doing these analyses then and now, do you have computers that help you, or how did you actually read all? Did you just get printed materials, or how did you in those days get the materials to read about the Washington Post? Or how do you do it today?
Well, pretty much the same way, except there's fewer opportunities now. But I met Bob Woodward back, and he'd just come out with all the president's men, and all of a sudden, below 30 years of age, he was getting quite wealthy, and we had breakfast or lunch over at the Madison Hotel. And he said, "What do I do with this money?" And I said, investing is just about assigning yourself the right story. I said, imagine Ben Bradley this morning said to you, "What is the Washington Post company worth?" What would you do? You have to write the story in a month. You'd go out and interview TV brokers and newspaper brokers and the owners, and you'd try and value each asset. I said, that's what I do. I assign myself the right story. And it's nothing more than that. Now, there's some stories I can't write. If you ask me to write a story on, what is some glamorous but non-profit-making business worth, I don't know how to write that story. But if you ask me to write a story on what is Potomac Electric Power worth or something like that, I can write the story. And that's what I'm doing every day. I'm assigning myself a story, and then I go out and...
One thing I will tell you that I didn't realize when I was getting out of school is how much the unusual person will jump out at you. I mean, and it isn't because they got 200 IQs or anything like that. It's really because of just how they behave, what they bring, the energy they bring, the commitment they bring, the quality of how they do things, how they treat the people around them, all kinds of things. But you will jump out much more than you might anticipate. One of the things you would want to be sure to do is, whether you like it or not, get very comfortable, it may take a while, with public speaking, for example. I mean, that's an asset that will last you 50 or 60 years, and it's a liability if you don't like doing it and are uncomfortable doing it. That also will last you 50 or 60 years, and it's a necessary skill. But a lot of the skills are just human skills. If you get the best out of people around you, that's a rare talent, and it doesn't correlate with IQ. It correlates with an attitude and toward the world and toward other people. And it's a talent that if you work at early and you're really conscious about it, you don't have to show up other people. You don't have to be smarter than they are or anything else. You want to bring out the best in them. It will pay huge dividends.
I went one-on-one with LeBron a few years ago, and we had a jump ball. And LeBron went up. He got the tip. Went the length of the court, dunked it, and just then turned around, and just then I was jumping. So that's I got lucky. Bill says if I'd been born a few thousand years ago, I'd have been some animal's lunch, because I'd have gone on saying, well, I allocate capital, and the animal would say they're the kind that taste the best, and I can't run fast, and I can't climb trees. You don't need a lot of brains in this business. I mean, I've always said if you got an IQ of 160, give away 30 points to somebody else, because you don't need it in investments. What you do need is emotional stability. I've got a partner, Charlie Munger, says he admires humility enormously, but he wasn't quite given his fair share. We call on people that have $1 billion or more, at least Steve tells us they do, and all we ask is 50%. So if if you have trouble living on $500 million, I'm going to put out a book, How to Live on $500 Million. I don't think I can win every game. You know, somebody said, how do you beat Bobby Fischer? You play him any game except chess. So I don't play Bobby Fischer chess. Let's do it here now. Now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friends, I'll say it clear. I'll state the fact, something or else of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full and traveled each and every highway and more, much more than this. I did it my way.